Welcome to Peace Now. My name is Trudy Quaife. I'm a member of Bethlehem Neighbors for Peace. We're a local organization of friends and neighbors. We've been advocating for peace and justice for the past 10 years. I'm your host today, and I'm joined by Malalai Joya. Thank you for being here, Malalai. I want to tell you a little bit about Malalai. She lives in Afghanistan. She was elected to Parliament at the age of 27. She's a human rights activist. She's now a former member of the Afghan Parliament. In 2010, Time magazine named her one of the 100 most influential people in the world. She's author of the book, A Woman Among Warlords, The Extraordinary Story of an Afghan Who Dared to Raise Her Voice. She's on tour of the U.S. right now. The tour is sponsored by the United National Anti-War Coalition and the Afghan Women's Mission. Malalai, let's start by talking about the conditions in Afghanistan now. The U.S. has been at war in Afghanistan for 12 years. Can you tell us what things are like in Afghanistan after 12 years of war and occupation?
Yes, unfortunately, the situation is disaster there now by presence of tens of thousands troops there in my country. Most of Afghans, even in Kabul, they suffer from injustice, insecurity, corruption, joblessness, poverty, especially women. They are still the most and prime victims. It is true in some big cities like in Kabul, in Mazar Sharif, in Jalalabad. These Western governments and their puppet regime brought some positive changes. For example, they built some schools that some girls can go to schools and women have access to job and education. But in most of provinces of Afghanistan, situation is for most people is like hell. And these small things that they did is just for justification of their occupation. And the consequences of these sinister years of war was more bloodshed, more crimes, more women rights, human rights violations, looting of our resource and changing of our country into a mafia state. As during these 12 years, tens of thousands of innocent civilians have been killed by occupation forces and terrorist groups who are in power. These warlords who are brother and creed of the Taliban. And this 12 years they were saying, US government, to our people that they are fighting against Taliban. They are there for the so-called war on terror. But now publicly they say to our people that Taliban are not their enemies. And they are true. At least on behalf of my people, I have been saying to justice-loving people around the world in this 10 years that Taliban, warlords, all these terrorists are the products of the White House, and they are only the enemies of these Afghan people. And now, under the name of National Peace Reconciliation, they are going to negotiate with these terrorists, Taliban too, and bring them in power. If Taliban also come in power, the situation will be more bloody, more disaster, especially for the women of my country.
Would you want to talk a little bit more about what the effects of this 12 years of war have been on the women of your country?
Yes, unfortunately, women still, they suffer from different sorts of violences, like rape cases, acid attacks, forced marriages, child bride, domestic violences, cut the nose in ears of the woman, even threw hot waters on them, and different kind of violences and crimes against women increasing more and more, even skyrocketing. As nowadays I follow the case of Shakila, 16-year-old girl who has been raped by a member of the provincial council of Bamiyan province, is a warlord man, and then first raped and then killed, shooted by Kalashnikov. And 3 other members of the parliament, they are also partner in this crime, and now they are trying to forge the medical report of the raped girl. And the family received death threats, and they come to me, this poor suffer family, to raise their voice and at least not allow this mafia court that we have, non-democratic court, to end this case in the favor of these rapists. and self-immolation in Afghanistan is day by day increasing more and more as these women want to get rid from all these miseries to they eliminate themselves. So we are there to educate them, especially to know their own identity, trying to give them hopes, courage, and at least that to raise their voice to people around the world and also in Afghanistan against these fundamentalists who are in power. Still, most of women, they wear burqa just to be alive, even in Kabul. And same like Taliban time, we have jungle law, and especially in the rural areas. Not only in the rural areas, for example, just few months ago in Parwan province, that a few kilometers away from Kabul, there a young woman, her name Najiba, she publicly has been shooted by Kalashnikov on her whole body by Islamic fundamentalist party of Gulbuddin Hekmatyar, as now US government invite this terrorist to join this puppet mafia regime. And in Ghazni province, two women just publicly executed, shoot it on their head and beat it, killed them. Or many times they beat women publicly in these rural areas with lashes, same like Taliban time. And many examples like this. But for example, you see in Parliament of Afghanistan, this mafia parliament we have, 25% seats belongs to women, but most of these women are pro-warlords, pro-occupation women, and even fundamentalist women there. As just recently, even an MP called Nurzi Atmar, who had linked with these warlords, now searching for asylum for her abusing husband.
For those Americans who might think that the U.S. brought democracy to Afghanistan, do you see any way that the U.S. brought democracy to your country?
You know, as our people says, they brought democracy for just bunch of killers, for the sworn enemies of democracy. These warlords that who are mentally same like Taliban, only physically changed and with suit and tie imposed on Afghan people who did civil war from 92 to 96. Alone in Kabul, they killed 65,000 innocent people when they were in power, and also even raped grand old mothers, 70 years old, 4 years old babies. The same rapists, the same killer, and these misogynist terrorists. After the domination of the barbaric Taliban, they come in power, but doing shave, wearing suit and tie, talking about democracy, women's rights, imposed on Afghan. That's why the situation is bloody and disaster, and Afghanistan is the safe haven for these terrorists. In the Taliban time, we had one enemy, was Taliban, was people against them and hated them, and Democrats was doing a struggle against them, these justice-loving people, progressive people. But this 12 years, our people, they squashed between three enemies: warlords, Taliban, occupation forces, in fighting against these three. And US and NATO empowering these reactionary terrorists, warlords, and even Taliban, and now invite them to join this regime. And there are great obstacles for true democratic-minded elements there. At least my life story could be an example to tell you these big lies of the US and NATO, who are saying we are there to bring democracy, or says these big lies that first time we brought women's rights in the history of Afghanistan there, which is a big lie. While women in the 60s, 70s, they had limited rights. We have photos on that time that how these women and young girls without a scarf, with modern clothes, they walk on the streets and they play their role. But this more than 3 decades of war, those who were in power and had support of the US and now have support of NATO too, and they are puppets and misogynists are in power, and don't let that men and women both a little bit breathe in peace.
Okay. Afghanistan has been known for growing poppies and the production of heroin. What effect has the war had on that?
Yes, as earlier I said that they have changed Afghanistan to a mafia state, today more than 90% of opium in the world produced from Afghanistan.
90%?
And yeah, there is
wow.
official report. And also opium even found its way on the streets of New York and Europe. Even once New York Times, as a mainstream media, gave report that brother of Hamid Karzai, Ahmad Wali Karzai, who has been killed by they say it's Taliban. Anyway, he was like people called him his second Bush in Kandahar province. New York Times exposed that as a drug lord person there. And these other like these drug lords who are in the parliament, they are in the cabinet, and they are ministers, they are chief districts, they are commanders. Foreigner says that to people, poor farmers, stop planting of opium, but the high-ranking officials of the government or these drug lords. So it was one of the main projects of the CIA. They have changed Afghanistan to the center of the drug, as billions of dollars every year they make from the opium industry. And also I believe opium is even more dangerous than Al-Qaeda in terrorism, because destroy the life of these Afghans, most of them women and children. As according the recent report, the official report, there are around 2 million people are addicted. Most of them are women and children. Even the government gave report like around 1.5 million, something like this. But many examples like this, like opium bride, is another problem that you see, that how girls aged 16 or below 16, they married with warlords in exchange of, because the family, the former, they cannot pay opium for the warlord, then they marry their little girls. And many examples like this, that still they are not serious to stop planting of opium.
Yeah. The U.S. is planning to pull the U.S. troops out of Afghanistan in 2014. I think they're planning to leave about 9 military bases, but they are planning to pull the troops out. What effect do you think this will have on Afghanistan?
You know, first, I believe in a country which has military bases, they can't expect that they have freedom, independence. In a country that do not have independence, talking about democracy, women rights, human rights, it's just a painful joke, a ridiculous joke. In my country, how US is hypocrite. From one hand, they talk about withdraw of their troops. From another hand, they are working on US permanent military bases they are talking about nowadays, and going to make it legalized. And they have countless secret military bases, and they are expanding day by day more, like what Noam Chomsky said, Professor Chomsky, that about the embassy of US and Iraq in Baghdad, the huge city within a city. Same, it suits completely in Afghanistan, and they are there for their long term. As people of the world, they should know that US is there in Afghanistan for their own strategic, regional, economic and political interest. As today my country look like a sick body, every one of these countries and 40 other countries in the name of NATO, including neighbor countries like dictator regime of Iran, Pakistan, etc., they want to have their own pieces from this sick body, or from this muddy water, to catch fishes for themselves. So I says democracy, women rights first do not come by the support of sworn enemies of these values, and no nation can donate liberation to another nation. Liberation should be achieved through the people themselves, but unfortunately they do not leave us alone that to fight against our enemies, as empowering them more and more economically and politically.
Yeah. Now, how about the Taliban? Do you think the way forward is to negotiate with the Taliban?
You know, what they are doing, I mean US government and NATO, in the name of national peace reconciliation, trying to bring terrorist Taliban also in power. And Gulbuddin Hekmatyar, who has named this about 12 years, was in the blacklist of the US as a wanted criminal. And now without at least these terrorists say apologize to Afghan people, they or bring them to the court, invite them to join this regime, same like these warlords. And the first demand of Afghan people is justice. And as just recently about a list of 500 intellectuals, progressive people, leftist, secular, who has been killed and massacred by a puppet of Russia, called them Khalki and Parchami, that who, when Russia occupied under the name of socialism, committed crime. So these killers of these 3 decades of the war, now under the name of peace, they want to be more united. That's why I believe this peace is more dangerous than the current war. To be make more united the enemies of Afghan people, to be easier first to eliminate these democratic minded activists who are living there, risking their life, and also to be easier continue to their fascism. And now they want to make more powerful their puppet regime and also legalize their military bases. Then few thousands of the troops they will withdraw to tell to good people of this country, justice-loving people of this country, that we are leaving Afghanistan now. But even indirectly they can control Afghanistan through this their puppets and also these military bases that they have. And no question that when these troops, few thousands even withdraw, situation will be disaster. It is not because of the withdrawal of the troops, it is because of the bringing Taliban also in power, the Gulbuddin Hekmatyar are also in power. That's why situation getting disaster, more disaster, especially for women and freedom-loving fighters here.
I should point out that Malalai is one of the people who's risked her life as an activist for her country. And the reason that she's a former member of parliament is because she stood up to the warlords and spoke truth to power. So it's pretty remarkable. But at this point, her life has been threatened, and there have been numerous attempts on her life. And she's described herself as an underground activist. Could you describe what your life is like in Afghanistan?
Yes, I'm moving from place to place. I can have office, how it is difficult for an activist that do not have office, or someone like me who is famed there and people listening to me and they agree with me, especially victim families, and come to me day by day more. And these intellectuals, progressive people come, students of the university, to discuss with each other about these political issues and how we can help each other, how to be more organized. As now, like network, I'm active there in Afghanistan with the members of this network is like these, most of them are youths, voluntarily support, and they are active like in the name of defense committee. They link me with the supporter around the world. These invitation letters come, they help. And regarding translation of the articles that I'm writing in English, some of them English is perfect. According security problem that I have, my bodyguards that they taking care and solve their problems, and supporters financially support, raise some money and some public ones, and goes for the bodyguard itself is a big project on my shoulder. And this is how we are working, or this running this website or these other social networks like Facebook, Twitter, and help each other in different provinces, have link and representative. Like this we are working. But my life day by day getting more risky because I expose these criminals and not sit silent. And also I'm, because of woman, and never compromise, and internationally also travel and expose their mask for good people around the world, as they are deceiving them each time traveling, putting dust in their eyes. And last year even these terrorists attacked my office in Far province, and 2 of my bodyguard brutally injured. You can see on my Facebook that how much they are brave, despite that these terrorists shooted them and beated them with knife. Then the other neighbors, they did resistance, who are supporters. They woke up midnight, attacked them, these terrorists. And also my other bodyguard, they did resistance. Then fortunately they are alive. And again, when I went to the hospital, they were laughing. They said, we are with you and you are not alone. So it is as a tip of the iceberg. I told you how terrorist, misogynist these warlords in Taliban are. And even the 7 assassination attempts is not less. Look, in the Taliban time, under burqa, I was teacher, and underground, and today war no Taliban, you know Taliban. But this, since US came there and NATO came, for example, my experience as a Democrat or freedom loving fighter in my country as a woman activist, despite wearing burqa and bodyguard, not safe. And as I said, this is how I'm living, not easy. Is now this baby that I have to move from one place to another place. Why I'm sharing this with you as example, I'm telling you, while there are many Malalais like me, men, women, most of them young, they are risking their life and they are bringing positive changes, helping the people. You should help them. You should put pressure on your government to stop this wrongdoing and this war crime in the name of American people. So you know my story a little bit because I'm fame, and it should be as an example to know what your government is doing there.
Yes, I agree. You recently described the situation in your country in the following way, and this is a quote: "Imperialism and fundamentalism have joined hands to lead the world to barbarism." I think that's a great quote. I wondered if you could just describe a little bit about what you meant by that.
Yes, you know, I think it exactly suits what U.S. government as a superpower doing, and these other big powers, Western governments, who support fundamentalism, extremist fundamentalists in the name of Al-Qaeda or Taliban or warlords, and not only in Afghanistan, in different parts of the world. As you see, since Barack Obama came in power, U.S. administration, how they wage more the war. They surged more troops in Afghanistan. The result you saw that was more bloodshed, crimes, barbarism, and also drone attacks they did and took the life of innocent people in Pakistan. Every day they take their lives. Or interfere of the US in the Libya after this uprising of the glorious uprising of the people under the umbrella of the UN, how they interfered and installed their own puppets, supported Al-Qaeda. What they are doing now in Syria is just heart-wrenching and change this country to the ashes, and their people will witness the darker days as they are supporting giving weapons to the fundamentalists, while you see that against dictator Bashar al-Assad regime, and as US says that we are against Al-Qaeda. How hypocrite is the US government? These example enough to show you. And also in Iraq, what they did, this list can be prolonged, that still they are waging the war. What's going on in Palestine, just heart-wrenching, and still support the Zionist regime of Israel. That's why I say that when imperialism with fundamentalism join their hands together against freedom-loving fighters, good people, or try to lead the war toward barbarism, we should fight against it. Even if it happens in Iran, Iraq, Libya, or any other war-torn countries, oppressed countries, we should be more united like them against them if we want to have achievements and to win. And I'm sure one day we will win, because we are right, we are walking in the right direction. People, this big power with us. Patrick Tyler says in the world is two superpower. One is the US, one is the world public opinion. I agree with this great woman, her quote. And unfortunately, this mainstream media, this propaganda machine in the hands of these warmongers, deceiving these good people around the world for a while, but not forever. I'm happy to give you the example of Syria, of Egypt. US interfered and installed their own puppet regime, supported these Muslim Brotherhood, these Ikhwan there, these extremist fundamentalists. But very soon you saw that great people of Egypt stand up against that regime, and still you see in a different way US interfered there. Many examples like this.
Good. Why did you decide to come to the United States on a tour?
Yes, it is part of my struggle that since I became famous, as in Afghanistan we lost all tribunes, but fortunately justice-loving great people of the US around the world in other countries, they invite me on behalf of my people, especially these suffering women, to bring their message to them and asking for the international solidarity that we really need your helping hand. We need your educational support. As always I say, it is a key against occupation toward emancipation. And that's the reason I'm here, that we need your moral support, we need your financial support, especially education support for this good cause, that when US government bombing and doing massacres and even use white phosphorus cluster bomb or bombing even our wedding parties. But we are so honored and happy that great people like Professor Noam Chomsky, like great people like you, people of the US, all those who are listening, they always as human beings, as justice loving people. But we need your more support. And as always I say that for our people, US has two faces. One is the Dutch imperialist government of the US, another is the great people of the US like Edward Snowden, like Chelsea Manning, like the name a little difficult for me to pronounce, like Mike Prisoner, like Daniel Ellsberg, Joe Clinton. They are all these thousands and hundreds and thousands of anti-war soldiers. They are heroes for us. For their government, they consider traitors, but they live in the hearts of countless and millions of oppressed people all over the world. We love them and they are our heroes and inspired by them. But we need more Snowden, we need more Mattis, we need more Chelsea Manning, and also Professor Noam Chomsky's, and Chomsky's must not leave us alone. Do not let Afghanistan to be forget again.
Yes, I want to just mention your book again. I think that your book is just wonderful. It's a biography. One of the things that impressed me so much was how aware you were at such a young age. And as a teenager, you already understood that you needed to help other girls learn to read and how important that was. And really, that's such a revolutionary act. And for such a young woman, I wondered, how were you educated and how did you develop that awareness at such a young age? Were there books that you read or people that influenced you, or?
Yeah, it has different reasons. You know, in my book also you read some books I inspired, also some personalities, some movies even, like Gadfly movie is a very good movie and it teaches you a lot, especially that how to love your country and believe in self-determination. And many examples like this, as I have a lot of hero and heroines in my life, that they are some alive, some retired. We follow their path and doing together struggle. But the history of my country is enough to give me courage, determination. We have proudful history, never accept occupation and against these terrorists, these puppets, and many heroes we had and heroine like Malalai of Maiwan, Nahid, Wajia, Mina, Sarwar Joya, Ghubar, Mahmoudi, etc., who did struggle in their life and even cost their life. Sarwar Joya was one of those that the second name I choose for my name has a very strong story you can read in my book, just for lack of time. Anyway, and also this solidarity of support of these great people around the world is enough to not let me to say be a second silent, especially this suffering people, these victim families who came to me, their sorrows, their pain will not let me to be silenced for a second. As always I says to my people, if I will be silent, it is equal to death. And always I says I don't fear death personally, I fear political silence against injustice. This is the point always make me worry. So fortunately people did not leave me alone, my suffering people. That's very important for me and for my people. And we are there despite these enemies. They are raising propaganda. She's not living in Afghanistan. They banned us from media. We lost all tribune in Afghanistan. We democrat-minded, justice-loving people. But fortunately, people around the world also not left us alone, which gives us more hope, courage, determination. And day by day, I see how huge distance I have from these killers, looters, misogynists, rapists, terrorists, and how much close to these victim families, suffering people. Today in Afghanistan, every door when you knock, they lost one of their dear ones. And I'm sure they are with me and someone like me who raise their voice and tell the truth and risking their life. Someday, if physically something happened to me, I'm sure there is many Malalais who will follow this path.
What can people do here who are listening to you, and really, what could people do in the U.S. to help your cause? How can we support you from here?
Yes, through different way you can support if you want, as you do, and it means it has huge moral value for us. And that today you invited me here, you gave me this chance that through your Tribune and this TV have indirectly meeting with the great people of the US to bring the message of my people to them. It is a moral support for us, gives us more hope and strength. And also that you organize events and public events in the universities. This time I have lectures in different universities in the US. So how you can help, you can morally also help, especially join your hands with anti-war movements here. And I organize demonstrations and different kind of social activities to open the eyes of these people, that to be more organized and unite against, first of all, your government, wrongdoing of your government. And also you can together, for example, can have this golden things like Twitter network, this social network you have. Through this you can do a good campaign, powerful campaign for justice against the occupation, like now you do against the war in Syria. And do not again forget that war in Afghanistan still continue and will continue, as a few thousands will withdraw, but their puppet regime remain there in their, as I said, military bases. We need your support for this prolonged struggle. Also, you can write articles, you can contact your honest politician to put pressure more on your government. And these are few examples I told you, while there's many examples. That's why one chapter of my book I dedicated to this question. You do not think I'm doing campaign for my book just for lack of time, that you should read it. It hopefully will help that how
yes,
we should do
everyone
campaign.
should read it. Yes.
Yeah, how to help each other.
Yes. It's a wonderful book. We only have about 2 minutes left. You're so compelling in what you say. I'm just wondering, are there any last thoughts you have that you'd like the American people to know? Is there anything that you'd like us to know about your country? We don't get much information from our mass media. So is there anything that you can think of that you'd like to add?
You know, about the tragedies as a tip of the iceberg, I told you. Some people call it negative. But about this positive things that usually less chance that to talk, I mean that about this resistance of these ordinary people of Afghanistan, this great people, this resistance of a student of the universities, and bravery of these progressive activists and some parties we have like Solidarity Party of Afghanistan running by youths, which is a source big of hope for the future. And how they are brave, how much that organizing demonstration, even some members of them went to the jail just recently for what they are doing, opening the eyes of the people, and they are just brave and risking their life, and thousands of people, hundreds of people joined their demonstration. It's a big positive point and hope. Also that there you see that how people have eager to education. This is hope that despite all these risks still they want to continue to have education. That's why support their education project. And how much they are against for example occupation, or you see these girls when they get raped, they do not sit silent, and they, despite all risk, all of these risks, they raise their voice. Many they are becoming a speak out, and many examples like this that gives us hope and shows that there's many positive things, just again because of lack of time. And we have proudful history. You can read the book of Bleeding Afghanistan, you can read the book of Devil's Game, you can read Eyes for Infidel, and these different kind of books also help you to know about especially when you know our enemies, then you know our people and how to help us.
We're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much, Malalai Joya, for joining me today.
Thanks for the interview.
It's such a pleasure to have you here, and I also want to thank the two organizations that are sponsoring your tour, the United National Anti-War Coalition and the Afghan Women's Mission. Thank you all for joining us, and I hope you'll join us again.
Thank you.